step behind the lens, and look beyond the boundaries of ordinary storytelling. Join us as we explore the defining moments in history, capturing the exact seconds that changed our world forever.
Put down the hose. What are you doing here?
This is my house. I live here.
This house doesn't match the man. You fit a certain profile.
I'm the homeowner. I'm an attorney. Everything you just said is being recorded on your own camera.
A black man is standing in his own backyard, watering his plants on a Saturday afternoon. He is wearing flip-flops, shorts, and an old college t-shirt. He has lived in this house for 11 years. He paid for it with money he earned putting criminals behind bars. Within the next 15 minutes, a police officer would show up without a warrant, accuse him of breaking into the property, make multiple racial comments caught on his own body cam, and demand he get on the ground with his hands behind his back. What this officer did not know was that the man he was about to try and arrest was one of the highest-ranking federal prosecutors in the entire state, and every single word the officer spoke was being recorded on that camera attached to his chest. Before we continue with this absolutely wild story, let me know in the comments where you're watching from right now. I love seeing how far this community reaches across the world. And if you have not already, please hit that subscribe button. It takes less than 1 second, and it helps bring you more stories just like this one. Trust me, you do not want to miss what happens next. Now let us get into this. The man watering his garden that day was a 52-year-old attorney named Robert Davis. He had worked in the federal justice system for over 25 years. He started as a public defender right out of law school. He worked his way up through the ranks. He handled drug cases. He handled white-collar crime. He prosecuted gang members. He put away human traffickers. Eventually, he was appointed as a United States Attorney for the Eastern District. This is one of the most powerful legal positions you can hold below the Attorney General. He oversaw hundreds of cases a year. He commanded a team of over 60 prosecutors. And he answered directly to the Department of Justice in Washington. But on that Saturday afternoon, none of that mattered. Because to the police officer who walked into his backyard, Robert Davis was just a black man who did not look like he belonged in that neighborhood. The neighborhood where Robert lived was quiet. Most of the houses were large with nice lawns. The people who lived there were mostly white. There were doctors. There were business owners. There were retired executives. Robert was one of only 3 black families on the entire street. He had lived there since 2013. His neighbors knew him. They came to his cookouts. Their kids played together. There had never been any issue. But that Saturday, a new resident had moved in a few houses down about 6 months earlier. This new resident did not know Robert. She had seen him a few times coming and going. She had never spoken to him. And on that particular Saturday, she looked out her window and saw a black man in the backyard of a house she assumed was empty because she had not seen the owner's car in the driveway for a few days. Robert's car was in the shop. He had been using a rental. The woman called the police. She told the dispatcher that there was a suspicious man in the backyard of her neighbor's home. She said he appeared to be looking through the windows and trying doors. This was completely false. Robert was watering his plants. He had not been near any window. He had not touched any door. But the call was made, and it was logged. And Officer Kevin Barnes was sent to respond. Officer Barnes had been on the force for 7 years. He had a mixed record. He had received multiple complaints in the past regarding his treatment of minorities during stops. None of those complaints had resulted in serious discipline. He had been given verbal warnings. He had been asked to attend a 2-day training session, but nothing more. When he received the call that afternoon, he drove to the address. He parked his patrol car in front of the house. He did not turn on his lights. He did not announce himself. He got out of the car and walked directly to the side gate of the property. The gate was unlocked. He opened it and walked into the backyard without permission. He did not have a warrant. He had not even knocked on the front door. This is where the body cam footage begins. The video shows Officer Barnes walking through the gate and moving along the side of the house. You can hear his footsteps on the gravel. You can hear birds chirping. It looks like any normal afternoon. Then he comes around the corner and sees Robert standing near a row of tomato plants with a garden hose in his hand. Robert looks up. He sees a police officer in his backyard. He's confused. He did not call the police. He has no idea why an officer is on his property. Officer Barnes immediately puts his hand on his holster. He does not draw his weapon, but he rests his hand there. He tells Robert to put down the hose. Robert looks at the hose. He looks at the officer. He slowly sets the hose on the ground. Now, I want you to imagine this for a second. You're in your own backyard. You're doing something you do every weekend. And suddenly a cop is there, hand on his gun, telling you to stop what you're doing. You have not done anything wrong. You're on your own property. What would you feel? Type unreal in the comments if you think this situation is absolutely crazy. Officer Barnes then asks Robert what he is doing there. Robert calmly responds that he lives there. He says this is his house. Officer Barnes looks at him for a moment. The body cam catches everything. And then Officer Barnes says something that would end his career. He looks at Robert and says that the house does not match the man. He says the caller described someone suspicious. He says Robert fits a certain profile. He does not use the exact words, but the meaning is clear. The words he used implied that a black man could not possibly own a home in this neighborhood. Robert asks the officer if he has a warrant. Officer Barnes says he does not need one because he is responding to a call about a possible break-in. Robert tells him that there is no break-in. He says he is the homeowner. He offers to show his ID. He tells the officer that his wallet is inside the house. Officer Barnes does not accept this. He tells Robert to get on the ground. Robert stands still. He does not move. Let me pause here and remind you of something important. Robert Davis has spent his entire career in law enforcement. He knows the law better than the officer standing in front of him. He knows that he has not committed any crime. He knows that he is under no legal obligation to get on the ground in his own backyard when he has done nothing wrong. But he also knows how these situations can go wrong. He has seen the cases. He has prosecuted them. So Robert stays calm. He keeps his hands visible. He speaks clearly. He tells the officer again that this is his home. He offers again to go get his ID. He explains that he is an attorney. He does not say exactly what kind of attorney, not yet. Officer Barnes does not care. He tells Robert that people like him always have a story. He tells him that the neighborhood watch has had issues before. He says the caller was very concerned. He implies that Robert is not being cooperative. Now the situation is starting to escalate. A neighbor across the street hears the commotion. He looks out his window. He sees the police car. He sees the officer in Robert's backyard. This neighbor knows Robert very well. They have been friends for years. He rushes outside and runs over to the fence. The neighbor shouts to Officer Barnes that Robert lives there. He tells the officer he is making a mistake. He tells him that Robert is a good person and this is his house. Officer Barnes turns to look at the neighbor. The body cam captures the neighbor's face. He is a white man in his 60s. Officer Barnes tells him to stay back. The neighbor says again that Robert is the homeowner. He says they have lived on the same street for over a decade. Officer Barnes hesitates, but he does not back down. He turns back to Robert and tells him he still needs to verify his identity. He says Robert will need to come with him to the front of the house. Robert agrees. He walks slowly with his hands still visible. Officer Barnes follows close behind. When they get to the front of the house, Robert reaches into his pocket slowly and pulls out his keys. He holds them up for the officer to see. He walks to the front door. He unlocks it. He pushes it open. He gestures for the officer to look inside. On the wall near the entrance, there are several framed photos. One of them shows Robert shaking hands with the governor. Another shows him at a Department of Justice event. There is a framed copy of his appointment letter to the position of United States Attorney. Officer Barnes looks at the photos. You can see his head turn on the body cam. He does not say anything for several seconds. Then Robert speaks. He tells the officer that he is the United States Attorney for the Eastern District. He tells him that he has been in this position for 4 years. He tells him that every single word the officer has said has been recorded on his own body cam. And he tells him that he will be filing a formal complaint before the end of the day. Officer Barnes does not respond. The body cam footage shows him standing completely still. His hand finally moves away from his holster. He takes a small step back. You can hear his breathing change. The silence lasts for almost 10 seconds. If you're still watching this, type "body cam never lies" in the comments. This footage is about to change everything. Robert then asks for the officer's badge number and name. Officer Barnes provides them. Robert asks if there is a supervisor on duty. Officer Barnes says yes. Robert tells him to call the supervisor to the scene immediately. Within 20 minutes, 2 more police vehicles arrive. The shift supervisor gets out. He walks up to Officer Barnes. They speak briefly. The supervisor then approaches Robert. You can see on the body cam that the supervisor's face goes pale when he realizes who he is speaking with. The supervisor apologizes. He asks if Robert is okay. He says he will personally review what happened. Robert tells him that he expects more than a personal review. He tells him that what happened was a violation of his rights. He tells him that the officer entered his property without a warrant, accused him of a crime he did not commit, made racially coded statements, and threatened to arrest him in his own backyard. The supervisor nods. He tells Officer Barnes to get back in his car. The officer leaves without saying another word. But this was only the beginning. Within 48 hours, the body cam footage was obtained through an internal review. Robert had requested it immediately after the incident. Once he reviewed the footage, he submitted a formal complaint to the police department's Internal Affairs Division. He also sent a copy to the mayor's office and the local NI Noijui ACP chapter. The footage was damning, not just because of what Officer Barnes did, but because of what he said. Every word the officer spoke was captured. The implication that Robert did not belong. The phrase about fitting a certain profile. The dismissive comment about people like him always having a story. Each of these statements painted a clear picture of racial bias, and there was no way to spin it. The police department was forced to act quickly. First, Officer Barnes was placed on administrative leave. Then an investigation was opened. Investigators interviewed the neighbor who witnessed the incident. They interviewed the caller who made the original report. They pulled Officer Barnes's history and found the previous complaints. The public reaction was intense. People were outraged. How could this happen to a man who had dedicated his life to law enforcement? How could a police officer walk into someone's backyard without a warrant and treat them like a criminal because of their skin color? What would have happened if Robert had not stayed calm? What would have happened if there had been no witness? These questions echoed across social media. Activists used the case as an example of systemic problems in policing. Legal experts weighed in on whether Officer Barnes could face criminal charges. Some called for him to be fired immediately. Others said he should be prosecuted for civil rights violations. The pressure on the police department was enormous. Eventually, the investigation concluded. The findings were released in a public report. Officer Barnes was found to have violated department policy in multiple ways. He entered private property without a warrant or probable cause. He failed to de-escalate the situation. He used language that violated the department's code of conduct regarding discrimination. And he ignored statements from a credible witness who confirmed the homeowner's identity. The recommended punishment was severe. But here's where things get complicated. Firing a police officer is not as simple as it sounds. There are unions. There are contracts. There are due process rights. Even when an officer does something clearly wrong, the system makes it difficult to remove them entirely. In this case, the police union pushed back hard. They argued that Officer Barnes had responded to a legitimate call. They argued that he followed protocol by asking for identification. They argued that his language, while unfortunate, did not rise to the level of a fireable offense. The city disagreed, but instead of a long legal battle, a deal was reached. Officer Barnes would not be fired, but he would be removed from active duty permanently. He would never patrol the streets again. He would never carry a badge in a position that allowed him to interact with civilians. Instead, he would be assigned to a desk position in a remote administrative office, and he would be required to complete 5 years of mandatory sensitivity and bias training. 5 years. Not 5 days, not 5 weeks, 5 years. This was one of the longest sensitivity training requirements ever imposed on a police officer in that state. He would be required to attend regular sessions with certified trainers. He would be required to write reflective reports. He would be required to pass regular evaluations. If at any point he failed to comply, he would be terminated immediately. His career as a patrol officer was over. Now, some people felt this was not enough. They wanted him gone completely. They wanted criminal charges. They wanted him to face the same consequences that a regular citizen would face for trespassing and harassment. Others felt the punishment was appropriate given the circumstances. They pointed out that the system rarely holds officers accountable at all. The fact that this officer would never patrol again and would spend years in training was, in their view, a form of justice. Robert himself released a brief public statement after the decision was announced. He said that what happened to him was not an isolated incident. He said that black people across the country experience situations like this every single day. Most of them do not have the protection of a title or a badge of their own. Most of them do not have body cam footage to prove what happened. He said that the system must change. Not just for people like him, but for everyone who deserves to feel safe in their own home. He did not call for Officer Barnes to be jailed. He did not demand anything more than what was given, but his statement made clear that he believed this was a symptom of a much larger problem. Now let me ask you something. Do you think 5 years of sensitivity training is enough? Or should Officer Barnes have been fired completely? Type training or fired in the comments. I really want to know what you think. As for the woman who made the original call, she was never charged with anything. She claimed that she genuinely believed something suspicious was happening. She said she was just being a concerned neighbor, but critics argued that she only called because she saw a black man in a neighborhood where she did not expect to see one. This case became a landmark example in discussions about racial profiling, the role of body cam footage, and the need for police reform. It was cited in training materials. It was referenced in legislative debates. It became a symbol of what happens when bias goes unchecked. And it all started because a man was watering his tomato plants. Robert continues to serve as a United States attorney. He continues to do his job with dedication. But he has said in interviews that the experience changed him. It reminded him that no matter how high you rise, certain assumptions can still follow you. He uses his platform now to speak about reform. He talks to law enforcement agencies. He pushes for better training. He works to ensure that what happened to him does not happen to others. Officer Barnes completed his first year of sensitivity training in silence. There have been no public statements from him, no interviews, no apologies, just a quiet exit from the world of active policing into a small office where he will sit for the next 4 years, learning lessons he should have known from the start. Justice does not always look like handcuffs in prison cells. Sometimes it looks like a badge being taken away. Sometimes it looks like a career that ends not with a bang, but with a long, slow grind of training sessions and paperwork. But one thing remains true. The Bodycam never lied. It captured every word, every action, every moment of bias that could have been denied without proof. And because of that footage, a man who was treated like a criminal in his own backyard was able to prove what really happened. If you made it this far, thank you for staying with this story. If you found it powerful, please share it with someone who needs to see it. And if you have not subscribed yet, do it now. There are more stories like this one waiting for you. Stories that need to be told. Stories that need to be heard. Until next time.
Every historical record holds a profound story waiting to be carefully uncovered. Every story we explore is a deliberate step closer to the ultimate truth. Thank you for joining us on this vital journey of discovery today.